I'm under no illusion that we are going to win first 4 races like we did last year. I think that will be a lot more difficult this year. But the championship, you count 16 races, and we have to do our best with what we have got now until we can have our new car, new engine up to the level that we could be happy to race with.
Williams, McLaren's chief rival, have a computerized active hydraulic suspension, which Nigel Mansell has been testing in Europe. Nigel's lost weight, he's supremely fit, relaxed and cheerful, and feels that this could be his year.
I start the season, I believe, whether anyone else does doesn't matter to me, what I believe in the strongest position at any start of any one year. Myself, mentally, physically, being focused. The car, we know the car, we've got a similar engine, we've got the same gearbox, the same aerodynamics. The only thing we've got new is the active. So therefore, like last year, we started with 4 new things. We're only starting with 1. So if you like, we've got certainly 70% better chance of getting the job done this year.
Ferrari have completely restructured their team after an awful 1991. Italian Ivan Capelli joins Jean Alesi to drive a new, superb-looking car with a unique double-bottom construction. There's a new boss in Luca Montezemolo. Englishman Harvey Postlethwaite returns as technical director, and there's an atmosphere of purposeful determination, reinforced by the presence of the great Austrian, 3-time world champion Niki Lauda as consultant.
All I'm really doing is to be an advisor to Mr. Lombardi, who is in charge, and they all want to do is just to use my experience and see if I can help. So really all I'm doing is watch the whole team performing, and if I see something, I just give my comment. But really, decision is all to Lombardi and the team.
The Big 4 teams are completed by Benetton, who, like Ferrari, have been restructured and now, like all the teams, use Goodyear tyres. For the first time, Martin Brundle, with Benetton, is in a top team. He's hungry for success, but in the young lion, Michael Schumacher, Martin's got a formidable teammate. 26 men start today's South African Grand Prix because, sadly for her and the Brabham team, Italy's Giovanna Amati has failed to qualify. And sadly for everybody, 3-time world champion Alain Prost is not racing today at Kyalami for Ligier. After a thrilling final qualifying session, Nigel Mansell starts in pole position for the 18th time. In fact, he was fastest in every practice session, and his pole lap was 7/10 faster than Senna, who starts alongside Nigel on the front row.
The girls with the flags. And of course, everybody lining up behind this man. Number 5, Nigel Mansell, who was on the left side of the circuit. Then this is the man who's standing on the other side. On the second row, that was Riccardo Patrese. Mansell electing to race his spare car. The race car had developed a little problem with a couple of computers, and it's got plenty of computers to assist Mansell trying to go fast, but a couple of problems, and they didn't really know what it was, so he elected to race the spare, which, as we saw in qualifying, is just as quick as his proper race car. Nigel Mansell, just before the start of his 166th Grand Prix of his Grand Prix career, he's 121, and it's his 18th pole position. And can he win this year's World Championship? That's the big question, and we won't know probably till Adelaide in November.
Nigel, it's a big pressure.
It's a big race.
What do you think about this car with this suspension for this race?
I don't know. I wait until after the race, but all I can say to you is that Renault Elf and the Cannon Williams team has done a fantastic job. I'm very happy.
Thank you.
Very cautious Nigel Mansell on the grid.
Alors Jean, viens voir la concurrence.
C'est important de voir le niveau.
Well, Jean Alesi is having a look around what everybody else is doing. He says, oh, just have a little look who's running a lot of downforce, who's running another lot of downforce, and I just see what happens. You know, I'll make my own decisions regarding the setup of my car, but I just like to know what everybody else is doing.
La McLaren de Senna.
Any comments on Senna's McLaren? He says, well, it looks like he's running a lot of downforce, so just try and have to get in front of him before the first corner.
C'est pas gagné d'avance, mais enfin bon, on a une voiture qui est très équilibrée pour le Grand Prix.
Yesterday, that the gear ratios were all wrong. Yeah, the problem that Mika Hakkinen has is he's a big fella, and Johnny Herbert's a lot shorter. So when it comes to the physical seating in the car, Mika Hakkinen has got a bigger problem, particularly selecting first and second gears. So what he's been doing in his race car is fitting a low third gear, a gear very close to second gear, so that he can avoid using second gear where Herbert would be using second gear. It all sounds very complicated, but basically it's just a comfort factor. But I hope for Mika Hakkinen's sake that they have got the ratios in that spare car gearbox so that he can have a comfortable race.
Nosso companheiro na RTL em comentários para a rádio e televisão alemã. E Nigel Mansell volta de novo a ser o grande rei de Kyalami. Volta mais rápida, a pole position para ele, a 18ª da sua carreira, a mostrar que na realidade o leão, como os ingleses chamam de Lion, voltou com força. Perdeu 4 quilos, nunca iniciou um campeonato do mundo com tanta força, tão bem preparado como este ano. Esteve um pouco afastado dos testes de inverno e está aqui em grande força. Foi sempre o homem mais rápido, não há dúvida nenhuma de que o Williams-Renault de Nigel Mansell é, nesta altura, o carro com o maior potencial da Fórmula 1, cerca talvez de 1 segundo, eu diria, mais rápido do que os seus concorrentes. Há quem diga mesmo que, finalmente, o Ron Dennis vai ser obrigado a fazer um carro de corrida a sério, um chassi verdadeiramente competitivo. Ao lado de Nigel Mansell vai largar Ayrton Senna, que foi 7 décimos de segundo mais lento com o seu McLaren Honda. Terceiro lugar para Gerhard Berger, que estamos a ver nesta altura, só 4 décimos de segundo mais lento do que o seu companheiro de equipa. Quarto tempo para Ricardo Patrese, quinto para Jean Alesi, o sexto para Michael Schumacher e o sétimo lugar para a equipa que em princípio poderia ter sido a equipa de Pedro Matos Chaves. Karl Wendlinger larga aqui com o seu Marsh Ilmor na 7ª posição, com o tempo de 1:18.1. Foi, sem sombra de dúvidas, a grande atração, a grande surpresa deste início de campeonato. Oitavo lugar para Martin Brundle com o segundo Benetton 4, nono para Capelli e 10º para Andrea de Cesaris, o que significa que nos 10 primeiros lugares temos 2 motores Ilmor, aqueles que, em princípio, até não estavam a ser considerados como os grandes motores do Campeonato do Mundo de 1992. Mas não há dúvida nenhuma de que o suíço poderá vir a ter uma palavra muito forte a dizer quando, a partir de 1993, for o fornecedor em exclusivo de motores para a Sauber.
Got off the straight here in South Africa. John, Nigel and Mika starting in a spare car. How does that reflect to your brain, I suppose?
Well, I think for Mansell it's no problem at all because his race car and the spare car are identical. In fact, he set his pole time in the spare car, so really it's just like an old pair of slippers. He puts one pair on and feel as comfortable as the other. And Mansell will not have any concerns whatsoever. In fact, it was his race car that had this slight inconsistency in the active ride suspension. I think the technical term is a spike. I think that's the word they use. It was just malfunctioning inconsistently, and they couldn't trace it, so they have to play safe. But the race car, the T car, are absolutely identical in every other way, and Mansell will be very comfortable indeed on his pole position. And it's from that pole position, really, he will want to take full advantage. Pole position here is on the left-hand side of the track. The first corner is to the right. Senna on the right-hand side of the track, of course, is on the dirty part of the track. Now, he's also slightly behind Mansell on the grid, so Senna has got the disadvantage, Mansell the advantage. And Mansell will want to capitalise as much as possible and get into that first corner first, because if he does that, then he will be up and away. He intends to take the first 10 laps as quickly and as hard as he can, and then sort of ease up and allow the rest of the field to chase him. And it's a very nice position to be in, where you can then consolidate and you can control your pace from the cars behind you.
We have a look at the grid. Mansell and Senna on pole position on the front row. Mansell way quicker than Senna, and the grid conveniently disappears again. There is Beck, Alesi, Schumacher, Wendlinger and Brundle on the third and the fourth row. Then it's Capelli and the Cesaris, and the Cesaris was, with Wendlinger, most impressive in qualifying. Johnny Herbert, the only Lotus in the top 11 at the moment. Olivier Grouillard, Comas and Boutsen. Comas quicker than Boutsen. That could have been the other way around, although it's not a very big difference. Tarquini, Suzuki, Alboreto and Katayama follow Morbidelli and Fittipaldi. And Fittipaldi has been very quick this weekend. He's been, well, quicker or just a little bit slower than teammate, a more experienced teammate, Gianni Morbidelli. Mika Häkkinen, Bertrand Gachot, Mauricio Guzman, JJ Leto, and the last row is Pierluigi Martini, and the only Brabham in the field, that of Eric van der Poel, the Belgian driver, making it 3 Belgians in the race, which is quite a lot for a small country.
Yes, it is. But of course, I suppose Jackie Ickx in Formula One terms is still probably considered to be their greatest Formula One driver. But there you see the support for Nigel Mansell, and there's a lot of Union Jacks around the circuit. And I suppose everybody here today is expecting to see Mansell win this first South African Grand Prix in 7 years, the first Grand Prix of 1992. But of course, it's a long race. It's going to be a very hard race. It's going to be a very physical race. At altitude, of course, your heart rate's going to be working harder. Dehydration's a factor, so most of the drivers will carry a drinks bottle in the car. The work rate on the circuit is also high. There's no real part of the circuit where you can catch your breath and really just prepare yourself for another lap. And that's one of the comments that has been heard frequently in the pit lane over the weekend. Can we not have another 500 metres of straight, please? We'd just like to catch your breath. And maybe at the end of the straight, a tight corner, a hairpin bend, so we can maybe have the chance to pass another car. But other than that, everybody's been really most courteous in their praise for this new Kyalami circuit.
1 minute ago, and that of course is 1 minute to go to the green flag lap. The first of 73 laps in total. The race will be 72, which is a distance.
Position for the South African Grand Prix. There's the man he's got to beat, Ayrton Senna. The 1992 Formula One World Championship is set to go. Settle back for the whole race now in the company of James Hunt and Murray Walker.
And welcome to Kyalami for the first South African Grand Prix in 7 years. The weather conditions here at this magnificent circuit, which has been completely reconstructed and which has the finest facilities that I think any of us have seen. The weather conditions are dull and overcast, a contrast to the 3 days of practice, unusually, because there was an extra session on Thursday, which were very hot, very sunny, clear blue skies. That's going to help some teams and hinder others. It's going to help Williams, and it's going to help Nigel Mansell there, who gets away for the parade lap of this 2.6-mile course, 72-lap race, leading the grid.
Yes, and welcome from me to this magnificent new rebuilt Kyalami circuit, totally different in character to the old circuit that was here, which was in those days physically pretty much a doddle for the drivers. It was mostly straight, not very hard work. This is extremely demanding, very twisted, turny, going to be difficult to overtake, and it's going to be very tiring at this altitude. Remember, we're at nearly 6,000 feet. There's not much oxygen for the drivers to breathe. There's not much for the engines to breathe. 20% less power, and even more loss of downforce at high speed for the cars. As far as the teams are concerned, last year's form is very much the order of the day, in that Williams are absolutely on top. Nigel Mansell has arrived leaner and fitter than usual, with he says a newfound attitude, and it certainly looks that way. He's very positive, and he has absolutely dominated practice and qualifying here in the last few days. In contrast, his teammate Riccardo Patrese has gone the other way. He weighed in at the 6-monthly weigh-in for the drivers, heavier than Mansell for the first time ever, and once he saw that, he seemed to go into a decline and has really not delivered at all, considering how dominant the Williams has been. McLaren have their old car here. Remember, this is really quite antique in terms of aerodynamics. It's very much 1990 aerodynamics, but still Senna qualified second fastest, his usual brilliance, and their new car runs for the first time next week, and they are quietly confident in a way that I've never really seen before from the McLaren team. They are fighting here, though. It's an uphill struggle. Mansell is the man to beat. In the meantime, the other teams are pretty much where they finished last year. The main interest has been new driver pairings. And we have the odd situation at Ferrari and at Benetton, where the known quantity has been the young tiger, if you like, in the form of Alesi at Ferrari and Schumacher at Benetton. And the interest has been to see whether their new, more experienced teammates can match them. Capelli and Brundle so far have not shown the pace, have not lived up to the hopes and expectations, but it's early days. Plenty more. Comas going well against Boutsen, and more to come as the race goes.
Now, the start of the South African Grand Prix is just as important as any other, particularly if Senna got to the front. But here is a technical point. The two Williams cars have got a new traction control device which limits wheel spin and should make the Williams absolutely rocket away from the start. We'll soon see whether it does or not. But if Senna gets ahead of Mansell, it's going to make it very difficult for the Englishman to get past. Although Kyalami is not like Hungary, and you will remember that last year Ayrton Senna controlled the race by getting away well from the start and beat Nigel Mansell into second position. Mansell rides well, 72 laps. And it's go, and Mansell's got away extremely well as they go up to the first right-hander. And sure enough, McLaren has dropped right back and up to the first left-hander. That is turn 4. It's Mansell in the lead.
And Patrese came through to second, but that was the brilliance of the drivers, Murray, because in fact they're not using their auto start today. They deemed it too dangerous, too much of a risk of a stall. The software is not yet sorted out. But Williams 1 and 2, and this looks like a real tough uphill struggle for the McLaren. Senna is going to have to fight. Alesi charging in fourth place.
Yeah, and Nigel Mansell's in a very commanding position now because his teammates can, not deliberately, but make it very difficult for Ayrton Senna to get past. Of course, Riccardo Patrese wants to win this race just as much as anybody else does. There are no orders in the Williams team, but it is still Mansell leading, Patrese second. Senna is in third position. It is Jean Alesi in the Ferrari in fifth place. In sixth position it's Schumacher, and that's Martin Brundle, who has spun off on the first lap in the Benetton Ford. A most unfortunate way for the Englishman to start his career with Benetton. He's looking for success in the new team, and we're riding now with Ayrton Senna as they come up to complete the first of these 72 laps, with Nigel Mansell going across the line, and we are chasing Riccardo Patrese. Mansell is into lap 2 now. Patrese is into lap 2. So are we. Now, riding round with Ayrton Senna into the turn 3. This is where there is a 4G loading on the drivers. 155 miles an hour at this point. This is turn 4, down to 70 miles an hour. Underneath the banner in a moment. And on towards turn 5. That's the right-hander where there is a 4.5G loading. Mansell took that corner once in 6th gear yesterday, and that was on his pole position lap.
Now this will be very frustrating for Senna because Patrese was not quick in practice, and now we're going to see the incident in action replay. There was, well, a whole lot of cars all trying to take that at once, but that was just one of the Dellaros, and I think that's Martini, and we didn't in fact see there's Brundle off, but I think the incident started ahead of where we picked up that replay. That's the Brabham off, rejoining the road. And midfield packing, really, I should think, was the culprit there. But Senna certainly will be very frustrated now. Patrese was really not up to scratch at all in qualifying. There was nothing wrong with his car, according to the team. He just seemed depressed about being fatter than Mansell. And that looks like that Brundle pulling off. And Brundle obviously may have done some damage. Senna, he will be most anxious to get past Patrese. Patrese inadvertently holding him up. The Williams will be difficult to pass. In the meantime, Mansell is pulling a huge lead. Mansell's got a lead of 3.5 seconds after 2 laps, and that's very much the practice form. But Senna can certainly go quicker than he's going if only he can find a way past Riccardo Patrese.
So we are now into lap 3, and Nigel Mansell is leading by a massive 3.6 seconds from this battle. And you can see that Patrese is starting to edge away in the Williams Renault from Ayrton Senna. There is Mansell, and in fourth position now it is Alesi, Schumacher is 5th, Gerhard Berger is in 6th position. Look for the McLaren, there goes Mansell through the S's. Now this is where the course starts to drop downhill, very, very fast, very hard on the brakes at that point. And in 7th position it's Capelli, in the 2nd Ferrari. In 8th position it's Johnny Herbert, 9th is Comas, 10th is Boutsen, 11th is Wendlinger, 12th is Suzuki. And you can see that riding with Ayrton Senna, Riccardo Patrese is pulling away now from the McLaren Honda. And Riccardo Patrese has obviously got the Williams setup problem overcome. He was 2nd fastest in the first practice session today, of the meeting, but then he started down in 4th position. So already it looks as though Ayrton Senna has got to go for reliability and hope for the best. And Riccardo Patrese has just lapped half a second quicker than Nigel Mansell. I remind you again, although Nigel Mansell is regarded by many people as number 1 in the Williams team, he is not regarded by Williams as number 1 in the team. They have equal ranking, and there is Ayrton Senna, 3rd position.
Yes, indeed, but there have been a fair bit of head-scratching in the Williams team and by observers this weekend because, of course, Patrese, we all expected to go home and spend his winter thinking that, of course, he could easily become world champion this year because he clearly has the ability. But as soon as he got in the car, the person who's been spending their winter thinking like that, you'd expect to be very fired up and go very well. But he did exactly the reverse. And to some considerable disappointment to the Williams team. And now that he's pulling away from Senna, this is the first real spark that he's shown all weekend. He's been substantially slower than Mansell at all times until now, and this is about the first time. He's pulling away from Senna.
Now this is an interesting battle because Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, chasing Ayrton Senna, and just behind him is in the brand new car. It's a reconstituted Ferrari team with a new boss, a new team manager, a new designer, or rather a return designer. And look, there is Alesi in the Ferrari chasing Ayrton Senna. And if you get a good look at the Ferrari, you will see that it has literally a double bottom. It's a new aerodynamic development that Jean-Claude Migeot, the Ferrari aerodynamicist, has produced, and it's enabling him to keep up with Senna. Now that's very good news indeed for Ferrari, because they've got a smaller, lighter, more powerful engine coming later. But now Mansell is leading Patrese on lap 5 by nearly 4 seconds, just under 4 seconds. Patrese in turn is 2 seconds ahead of this battle. Senna, Alesi, Schumacher, the only Benetton left because Brundle is out.
And Schumacher is starting to have a look for a way round Alesi. Ferrari has been very disappointed this weekend with the performance of their engine, and Schumacher will be looking to get alongside him, but this is really going to be a very difficult circuit for passing. There aren't any straights to speak of, or they're very short anyway, and not enough time for the slipstream to work. The cars don't get up to top speed at all here. They're still accelerating hard at the quickest point on the circuit. So Senna, who seems, if anything, to be holding that group up now. Senna clearly struggling for speed, and now dropped to nearly 3 seconds behind Patrese. Mansell very comfortable in the lead. He's now got nearly 5 seconds, 4.8 seconds Mansell to Patrese. Patrese 2.8 seconds ahead of Senna, and the two Williamses doing very much as expected, although it was courtesy of Patrase's outstandingly good start that he is not bogged down with the traffic for the time being, but the Williamses showing their tremendous superiority.
And while we ride with Ayrton Senna, hats off to Michael Schumacher, who is in 5th position in the Benetton Ford, because this is the young German. He's only 23 years old. It's only his 7th Grand Prix, and the only people who are ahead of him at the moment are Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, Ayrton Senna that we're with now, Riccardo Patrese, who is second, and Nigel Mansell leading. And the dominance, the superiority of the Williams here in Kyalami is quite incredible. Because even though Senna is in, as James has said, last year's car, so for that matter are Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese, with the notable exception of the fact that they have the new active suspension which has no conventional metal springs. Instead, it has high-pressure hydraulics, and it really works here at Kyalami. Williams enthusiasts shouldn't get too excited, though, for the rest of the season, because actually Kyalami is very different from any other circuits. It is, in fact, the Grand Prix slowest circuit. It's slower than Monaco on a lap speed basis. The highest speed that the drivers reach here is about 150 miles an hour. They reach that 5 times on the circuit. And as I've said earlier on, the problem here is going to be stamina and reliability. And Ayrton Senna, that we're with now, said to me yesterday, we can't live with the Williams here. I know that. I'm just going to have to rely on reliability and driving for points. 10 points for a win, 6 points for second place, 4 points for third position, and so on, down to 1 point for sixth place.
Yes, and at the moment, Senna is fighting to stay in front of that group that we're looking at in the inset there. He is struggling to stay in front of them. And the Williamses are clearly gone, and nobody else is a match for pace for the two Williamses here. Senna has just got himself a little bit of a breathing space, and Johnny Herbert is up to 8th place, and Herbert has really had a marvellous meeting so far. He's qualified really quite brilliantly in 11th place in a very, very old Lotus indeed, really fundamentally a 1989 car. It has none of the latest aerodynamics on it at all. They've done a little bit of work on the suspension, but it is a seriously out-of-date car. Of course, they've got the Ford HP engine in the back, which has given them a big boost. Mika Häkkinen's had a troubled time that is also going pretty well, but Johnny Herbert showing a great deal of maturity. We've always known how talented he is.
So, on lap 8, Nigel Mansell leading commandingly the South African Grand Prix, 1/10 race distance completed. He's leading Riccardo Patrese now by 7 seconds, and he will know, of course, exactly what the position is. He's just got to pace himself, keep going, make sure that he is all right, and hope that the car will be all right. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. Patrese some 3 seconds ahead of a real battle. There's Senna in third position, and now you can see the battle for fourth and fifth between the Ferrari of Jean Alesi, the Scarlet car, and the distinctively liveried Benetton Ford of Michael Schumacher. And in the pits is Jonathan Palmer with Martin Brundle.
Martin, after that excellent qualifying session, bitter disappointment for you. We saw the back end of that spin. Tell us what happened.
It's difficult to know. I was passing Karl Wendlinger, and for some reason we touched. And it's broken to get the car back on the road, I had to do a 180 spin, and it's broken the clutch.
So Martin Brundle out of the race with a broken Benetton clutch coming towards us. Nigel Mansell, look at the enormous gap there is between himself and Riccardo Patrese, his teammate, in second place on lap 9 in this 72-lap race. And the interest now is right here, because Alesi and Schumacher are starting to gain, I think, on Ayrton Senna. Senna, Alesi. And that is Schumacher, who is in fifth position. The Benetton, with its V8 Ford engine, is holding the V12 Ferrari of Jean Alesi.
Yes, big disappointment for Martin Brundle, because it hasn't been a great meeting for him, his first for Benetton, because he was very much second fiddle to the talent of Michael Schumacher. And yesterday afternoon in qualifying, he was just starting to get to grips with the car and was improving. He was a whole second and a half slower than him on Friday than Schumacher. Yesterday he was down to just under 7/10, which was a big improvement, and started to get settled. But he still has a lot of work to do, and he certainly could have done with the time in the car today. I saw a puff of smoke then from the Ferrari, I thought. And Alesi's Ferrari, just a bit of puff of smoke. We'll keep an eye on that. It does not necessarily anything particularly sinister. They have always been fairly smoky, and now we're riding with Nigel Mansell. Mansell leading now by over 8.5 seconds, and really very comfortable indeed for him. He will already be nursing the car. No need for him to rush away from the field. He can cut it down, pace himself to Patrese, and be happy, I would think, to go away at about a second a lap. until he's got 15 seconds, and then he can really just cruise it and look after the car, concentrate on his systems. They're not expecting to have tyre changes today. He'll need the cushion, of course, for lapping back markers, because that won't be easy, but he will make, say, a 20-second lead, will give him plenty of room. He won't have to hurry it. As I say, the teams, there is not a wear problem. There may be a loss of performance, but I should think in Mansell's case, without having to push it, he shouldn't even run into those. So he will expect to go the whole race in one go.
And Mansell is on his 11th lap, fastest lap by Mansell so far on lap 7, 1 minute 20.408, which is of course a lap record on this new circuit being used for a Grand Prix for the first time. Martin Brundle out, Bertrand Gachot out, so there are still 24 runners as Ayrton Senna soldiering on in third position, leads Lacey fourth there. Schumacher in fifth position. Gerhard Berger is again not really showing in the McLaren. It's strange this how Ayrton Senna manages always to get more out of the McLaren than Berger. There is Berger, and behind him is Capelli. That is Johnny Herbert. Here is Comas coming towards us, followed by Boutsen and Wendlinger. Wendlinger going extremely well, the Austrian, 11th position in the march that we used to have to call the Leighton House, and has been a change of management there, as a result of which, happily, March has reverted to its old and traditional name, and Wendlinger, the Austrian, member of the Mercedes-Benz sports car team with Michael Schumacher, has really shone here in Kyalami. He was 7th in one of the practice sessions. He's 11th in the race now, and Nigel Mansell is on his 12th lap, leading Patrese now by 11 seconds, who is more than 6 seconds ahead of Senna, who is 2 seconds ahead of the battle between Alesi, Schumacher and Berger.
Yes, and Carl Wendlinger, of course, has shown considerable talent in the few outings he's had in Formula 3000, and showed a bit of speed in qualifying when his couple of previous attempts at Formula 1, but he's confirmed now that he really has got some talent. He's quick and he's a definite racer. He really races the car. So, in the Ferrari team we have a similar situation, as I was saying much earlier on the warm-up lap, to the Benetton team, in that Alesi is the less experienced of the two drivers, but he's the known quantity, and Capelli also has shown that he is very much an unknown quantity. He's never really been in a competitive car. He's been around a long time, and he has not shown well so far. He's struggled. In fact, he hasn't matched Alesi for pace at all. He's done a lot of testing during the winter, and that rather confirms what one has suspected for a long time, that he's not going to make it.
Well, we are over 1/10 race distance now, and as I said earlier on, reliability is extremely important here. The conditions are very demanding, and with every point counting, every driver wants to finish at minimum in the first 6 places. Not possible, of course, to do that, but Mansell is on 10 points at the moment, and good news too, as you watch Schumacher for Williams, is the fact that Riccardo Patrese being second means that they're on a maximum of 15 points for the Constructors' Championship, and the struggle for that is just as great as it is in the Drivers' Championship. And McLaren have won it so many times in the past that Williams will be more than anxious to beat them this year. Well, they're in good shape to do so at the moment, but there's a long way to go in this race. Mansell leading on lap 13 by an ever-increasing margin. He's lapping faster than Patrese, not very much faster, but nevertheless faster. And he's now nearly 12 seconds ahead of the Italian, who is some 6 seconds ahead of Senna. Then Alesi, Schumacher, Berger is in the points, 6th place. Capelli in the Ferrari in his first race for Maranello, and we're with Senna now, is in 7th position. So you're looking at, in the inset, Senna, now Alesi and Schumacher, as over the line goes Ayrton Senna under the banner. Now he's doing 150 miles an hour here as he goes into the right-hander and then the left-hander. Now starts to climb up towards turn 4. You can see the crane on the right to lift cars off if necessary. Now there's a little straight bit. There's hardly anywhere on this Kyle Army circuit where the drivers can rest. Turn 5, 150 miles an hour, 4.5 G, starting to go downhill. Now, look at these magnificent hospitality units to the right, with the traditional thatched roofing. Now he's starting to drop downhill through the top sport S's, braking hard from 150 miles an hour into the left-hander at Westbank, which is the slowest corner on the course. Second gear, and you'll notice that Senna's hand comes off the steering wheel onto the gear lever, because unlike the Williams and the Ferrari, the McLaren does not have a semi-automatic gearbox, although the new one will have. He's still dropping down to turn 9, 150 miles an hour. Brakes hard, turn 10. Speed up again, up into 5th gear. And when you see him go under the banner, now he's approaching turn 12, the second gear, 50 mile an hour, left-hander. You'll see the grid markings on the road. Ayrton Senna goes through to complete his 14th lap, and he is now 7.3 seconds behind Riccardo Patrese, who is second.
And Senna is just edging away from Alesi. He's lapping very consistently. The lap before last was actually his fastest of the race so far. And there's the battle behind, Alesi with Schumacher, really going very well indeed, hounding Alesi. But as we suspected, it's proving as difficult, as we suspected to overtake on this circuit. The straights just aren't long enough.
And Michael Schumacher, I suspect, might be able to pull away from the Ferrari, and that is out of the race. Karl Wendlinger, well, he is the third retirement, and that's a great pity, because the Austrian, who's formed an extremely good rapport with Gustav Brunner, his Austrian engineer, he performed magnificently, as I said earlier on, in practice.
And Johnny Herbert is having a quite fantastic race in the old Lotus, because he's in 8th place, but more importantly, he's only 2 seconds behind Capelli and the Ferrari, who in turn is hounding Berger. So, in simple terms, apart from the two Williamses who are in a car of their own, Herbert is at the back of the leading group, and in a car that really should not be in that league at all. And Herbert, for a long time, has been a talent that has been ignored by team managers. He showed it last year. He was still largely ignored. Lotus now, happily, are a team that are coming up. They're recovering. They have better sponsorship. They've got a new car on the way. They already have a good engine, and that's made the current difference. But if they can put some proper aerodynamics on them, and I keep saying about aerodynamics, but there have been tremendous advances in the last 2 years on aerodynamics. And Lotus's car is older than that, and in fact McLaren are running the old aerodynamics. But Herbert is now an outstanding talent. He's fully experienced and he's fully matured.
And when you think that Johnny Herbert in 1988 had a quite appalling crash in Formula 3000, which almost destroyed the bottom half of both his legs, which had to be patiently rebuilt, and then he had to learn to walk again. It's a great testimony to him and what modern medical science can do. But here is Alesi, who seems to be edging away a little from Michael Schumacher. Berger in the background is in 6th place, and behind Gerhard Berger, when you see them come up, Ivan Capelli. So we're seeing now things are spread out, and Mansell will be just watching things very carefully indeed, because what he has to do now is finish, and of course finish where he is. And he's got almost the ideal cushion. He's building up all the time, although Riccardo Patrese on his last lap was faster than the Englishman. This is Gerhard Berger that we're with now. Just behind him, pity you can't see in his mirror, you can see his helmet in his mirror, but just behind Gerhard Berger is Ivan Capelli in the Ferrari, and as James has said, not so far behind Capelli, there is Johnny Herbert in the inset.
Yes, indeed. And really the car isn't fast enough, but he's lapping very, very consistently, Herbert. He can't lap as quick, really, as Capelli or even Comas behind him, but his consistency is keeping him right up there with the leaders. Now, Ayrton Senna is slowly chipping his lap times down. He's just put up his own fastest lap time of the race, and as a result has been able to stretch his lead over the pursuing Ferrari and Benetton to some nearly 5 seconds now. In fact, Senna crosses the line now, 7 seconds behind Patrese, and, well, 4.3 seconds ahead of Alesi.
Lap 18 out of 72. Nigel Mansell leads. Patrese second, both in Williams. Senna in the McLaren third. Alesi Ferrari fourth. Schumacher, Benetton fifth. Berger, McLaren sixth. Capelli, Ferrari seventh. Herbert, Lotus eighth. Comas, Ligier ninth. Boutsen, Ligier 10th. Suzuki in the Venturi Larousse is 11th. He's in the footwork. And Michele Alboreto, his teammate, is in 12th position. And there are just 4 retirements. Van der Poel is out. You saw him spin out. Martini is now out in the Dallara. Wendlinger is out. Gachot is out. And so, of course, is Martin Brundle. So things are starting to ease out in terms of people dropping out of the race, because I would be surprised if more than 11 people finish this race. We're on lap 19 now out of 72. We've already got that number of retirements. And here, behind Alesi and Schumacher, and here they are now, you can see Berger and Capelli.
Yes, in fact, behind the Williamses, and incidentally, Mansell's just put up a new fastest lap of the race, stretching his lead out to 14 seconds. And I think he'll still keep going on, but certainly he's not going as quickly as he could if he wanted. He's already eased up there, the 2 Ligiers in line astern, and they've now got Renault engines, which has certainly helped them. And there's the caption for the fastest lap. That is Johnny Herbert. So, in fact, if you take the 2 Williamses away, we've got a very close race going on behind them, because Senna leads the race for the others by 4.5 seconds from Alesi and Schumacher, who are right together. Berger and Capelli are shadowing them, and then Herbert, Comas and Boutsen are right there, as you can see. So it's really not a very big spread between Senna and Boutsen in 10th place.
These are the Ligiers of Boutsen and Comas, and it's a completely new Ligier. Ligier have got one of the largest budgets in Grand Prix racing, but it's the team that's done the least with the most in the recent past. They've had some pretty dreadful cars. But this new one, which looks very much like the Williams and was designed by Frank Durney, has got a Renault engine. Last year they had the Lamborghini engine. So Comas and Boutsen, there is Thierry Boutsen, are using the same motive power as the 2 Williams leaders, Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese. And hopefully, when Ligier have got their car sorted out, they will start to move up the circuit, particularly if Alain Prost drives for them. He's not with the Ligier team here in South Africa. There were a lot of people who thought he would be. But whatever complicated negotiations he's trying to sort out have not been sorted out yet. We are now on lap 20. Mansell leads, Patrese second, Senna third, Alesi fourth, Schumacher fifth, Berger is in 5th position. There are Alesi and Schumacher, and behind Berger is Capelli. You can see, there they are together, 4 cars, virtually together.
Yes, and in fact, from Senna in 3rd place to Boutsen in 10th place, there's only about 13 seconds covering that group. So, really, I suppose we should be a bit upset with the Williams team for spoiling the race with their superiority. But, of course, they really have done a fantastic job. Their car is absolutely the state of the art. They still have a new car to come sometime during the earlier half of the season, they hope. But the big car that is awaited now is the new McLaren, which they expect to produce a lot of changes to.
Yes, we're expecting several of the major constructors, as they are called, to produce new cars for the Spanish Grand Prix. Now, you see, the reason that Williams and McLaren and Benetton and Ferrari have a new car, have not produced new cars, is because the 1992 season is started by 3 long-haul races. South Africa, then Mexico, and then Brazil, before the first European race, the Spanish Grand Prix. And quite understandably, teams are saying we would rather rely on the 1991 cars that we have long ago overcome the teething problems of, whilst we're a long, long way away from base. And then they will use the period up to the Spanish Grand Prix to develop their new cars, although McLaren, I think, will probably be wanting to produce their new cars as soon as they possibly can in view of the dominance of the Williams here. And incidentally, the new McLaren is going to have some extremely exciting technical features, one of which is a fly-by-wire control system. The drivers are literally going to be doing most of their driving electronically. It's going to have an automatic gearbox, and Senna going through on the inside of somebody there. It's Van der Poel. Eric Van der Poel, who I told you had retired, has rejoined the race. He's only in his second Grand Prix. Last year he was driving the tubby Lamborghini with its V12 engine, which just wasn't up to the pace. And the Belgian is now in the better Brabham Judd.
Schumacher will be looking at him with interest because he and Alesi are coming up behind him, and that's the sort of moment that opportunities can present themselves with a little bit of uncertainty created by a backmarker ahead of them. So here comes Alesi, and Capelli is past Schumacher. Yes, and Capelli seems to have got through. That's Berger on board camera looking at that battle, two Ferraris and the Benetton. And what a pity we got a bit of break up with the picture there, because it looked to me as if Capelli was running a little bit wide there. And I suspect that Schumacher has made a mistake. Schumacher climbing all over the back and going down the inside.
And here is a terrific battle on the circuit, as seen from Gerhard Berger's McLaren Honda. They're coming up to complete the lap now. Mansell, Patrese and Senna have gone through into lap 23. Van der Poel is being caught. Now there is Alesi in 4th position. Schumacher is in 5th place. Berger is in 6th place. But Capelli is much closer to the McLaren Honda that we're riding with now than he has been for a long time. He's in 7th position. Johnny Herbert is holding a watching brief in 8th position.
That was most extraordinary, because Capelli got past and then dropped right back again, it would appear. So a fair bit of confusion. It was very hard to see what was going on when we were stuck on the on-board camera then, but much changing of places there, although they've in fact settled down back to pretty much where they were.
Yes, it's there coming towards us is Pierluigi Martini in the Dallara, and Mansell now is 18 seconds ahead of Patrese, and you can see there Alesi and Schumacher going inside, Van der Poel to pass him, so is Berger, so now, well, in 7th place Ivan Capelli. You're watching Van der Poel now, there is Berger. Well, as James has said, the Williams are making it a demonstration run, but what an absolutely super scrap behind them for the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th places.
Yes, and I'm afraid I made the classic mistake there and mistook a Dallara for a Ferrari. An easy one to make, but I apologise, and I shouldn't have done, but we were looking at the back views, and a red back view is a red back view, but Schumacher is really climbing and continuing to climb all over the back of Alesi. Berger there ready to pick up the pieces, and Capelli shadowing that group. So we've got a 4-car battle that has been going on all the time, but it's started to close up, and it's going to get a bit more furious. Remember, Schumacher, young, pretty fearless, very talented indeed. And he will be looking for these backmarker opportunities now as the leaders start to lap the third cars. Mansell, 18 seconds clear now. That should be enough for him to really, for a cushion anyway, to keep clear of backmarkers, give him plenty of time with the backmarkers, and he doesn't really need to worry. He can turn it on any time. He's lapping very, very comfortably, some 2 seconds slower than he could.
Lap 24, and I believe that this is not at all a happy race for McLaren, because I believe it is only the sheer brilliance of Ayrton Senna that is enabling him, as Gabriele Tarquini retires the Fonmetal with the Ford HB engine for the first time in a race. And the young Italian, who deserves a better car and has got one this season, only lasted for some 24 laps and is out of the race. But as I was saying, I believe it's only the brilliance of Ayrton Senna that's keeping the McLaren in third position, because look how Gerhard Berger is struggling behind Schumacher there in the Benetton, who is still chasing Alesi. The battle for 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th, that is to say, Alesi, Schumacher, Berger and Capelli rages, with Johnny Herbert, I think, edging up on them. Yes, his previous lap was faster.
Well, in fact, the fury of that battle as Herbert's dropped back now, he's 6 seconds behind Capelli, and that's no great surprise. Yellow flag there just for the parked car. They'll do that just to warn drivers that there's some danger, and once everybody's passed that parked car for a lap, if they haven't removed it, it'll be a stationary yellow flag. Another lap, they'll take it away, because drivers then know that it's there. There is the 4-car battle. Herbert, as I say, 6 seconds behind, still going extremely well, but he really doesn't have the equipment, anything like the quality of equipment that these people have, or indeed the 2 Ligiers behind him. We've got the latest, or nearly the latest Renault engines. They've got very much a 1992 state-of-the-art car aerodynamically, and it's really quite magnificent job by Johnny Herbert. I can't stress that too much.
There go the 4 together, and on lap 26 out of 72, Nigel Mansell has lapped everybody up to Christian Fittipaldi, the brilliant young Brazilian, son of Wilson Fittipaldi, nephew of Emerson Fittipaldi, who is 16th in the Minardi Lamborghini. And it's Mansell leading, Patrese second, then Senna, and then this battle that you're looking at, Alesi 4th, Schumacher 5th, Berger 6th, Capelli 7th, Johnny Herbert is 8th, Thomas and Boutsen 9th and 10th, Cesaris in the Tyrrell is 11th, Suzuki is 12th, Alboreto is 13th, Briard is 14th, then it's Leto and Fittipaldi 15th and 16th, Tarquini is out, and Nigel Mansell is still the fastest on the lap, 1 minute 19.55, a speed of 119.2 on lap 18.
I find Patrese very difficult to understand, because he doesn't seem to be racing Mansell at all, but he doesn't seem to be racing because his lap times are varying. He's suddenly speeded up a bit. Senna's driving for all he's worth, and he was keeping in touch with Patrese for a while, then and now Mansell shoved in a quick one there, and that's taken him to plus 20 seconds, and a bit more than 20 seconds. But as I say, Patrese, Senna, who's driving absolutely consistently as one does when one is driving flat out, his lap times are very, very similar lap after lap, and yet Patrese has suddenly stretched it away for no apparent reason.
Ferrari, Benetton, McLaren, Ferrari, and Capelli is certainly closing on Berger, who is dropping back now from Schumacher. Here is the Berger and Capelli battle, Capelli in the Ferrari.
And I must say, going back to what I was saying, it must be immensely frustrating for Damon Hill, the Williams test driver who's done so much to contribute, made such a big contribution to the performance of the Williams, to watch somebody like Patrese not getting the best out of the car and not really doing what the car can, not doing in the car what it's capable of, and that is, must be frustrating. Damon Hill, a very hard-working and very talented driver.
Well, nevertheless, in Patrese's defence, he's holding a second position well ahead of Ayrton Senna, who seemingly can do nothing about it, despite his skill and experience, despite the Honda power, and Capelli there, number 28, driving in his first race for Ferrari, is edging up on Berger and looking for a way past the Austrian to put the second Ferrari in the top 6 points scoring places. And Capelli, of course, had an absolutely appalling career in the latter years with the Leighton House team. Last year he just had 1 6th place. But he's lost none of his talent. He failed to finish 10 times in the Leighton House last year, Ivan Capelli. And so now in this Ferrari, which with the aerodynamics, which as I said, you could just see there as the car came towards you, that very distinctive flat bottom, which is separated from the monocoque of the car to leave a clear air tunnel. as a result of which the car's handling on fast corners is absolutely magnificent. But Nicky Lauda, the new team consultant, told me yesterday that Harvey Postlethwaite, the English technical director of Ferrari, and his aerodynamicist, Mijo, have still got to do a lot of work on the Ferrari to make it go quickly, or quick enough, around the slow corners.
Yes, and certainly Capelli is doing a much better job in the race today than he managed in qualifying on Friday and Saturday, and is now with his teammates. But we must not forget, as we watch this tremendous battle, there is Harvey Postlethwaite, the Ferrari chief designer, who's been responsible for very radical, very exciting aerodynamics on the Ferrari. But we must not forget Nigel Mansell. Of course, he's out in front, he's the man controlling the race, and he's certainly controlling it with great aplomb, but it's not a very exciting thing to watch, and we've got a terrific four-car battle going on behind.
Well, I've said many times that I've never come across anybody that's got his audience by the throat the way Nigel Mansell has, and I don't suppose the British viewers will be worrying too much. He's 23 seconds now ahead of Patrese, who is still that 7 or 8 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna, and that's a Ferrari out. Now, which one it is, or is it a Dallara? No, it's Ferrari. It is Ivan Capelli. He's done it. He's just overstressed the Ferrari in some way. And so on lap 30 out of 72, Ivan Capelli joins the other retirees. And we're starting to edge down towards that figure of 11 finishers, which I have in my mind out of the 26 starters. Such is the severity and the demands of the course and the climate and the anti-clockwise nature of Kyalami on the cars and the drivers. And that, coming up, is Andrea De Cesaris.
Well, it seems that with regard to Brundle's retirement, as ever, there are a few sides to the story. And according to Carl Wendlinger, he was entering the second gear West Bank hairpin when Martin came up the inside, tried to overtake Martin's right front, he's Wendlinger's left rear wheel. But at the same time, apparently, Martin was nudged behind by De Cesaris' Tyrrell, and so we saw his Tyrrell off there too. So a combination of factors there. A rather perplexed Sheridan Finn, though, has reported that, as far as they know, there is no problem with Patrese's car.
Well, now we're looking at the two Ligiers, Comas and Boots in 8th and 9th, with the very determined number 4, Andrea De Cesaris, closing up on them in the Tyrrell Ilmore. This is Nigel Mansell leading on lap 31. Now, I'll just let him go through and we'll see how much of a gap there is between him and Ayrton and Riccardo Patrese. Mansell's fastest lap, 1 minute 19.9 so far. Well, he's well on his way now into his 31st lap, and Patrese's just gone through, 26 seconds behind, but now Ayrton Senna is starting to close up. It seems to me that James may well be right, and Williams may not have the message from Patrese.
Well, I mean, I don't know why Sheridan Finn should be perplexed about there being nothing wrong with Patrese's car. There's been nothing wrong with it all weekend, and the team are well aware that the problem seems to be in the cockpit.
Well, James and I are having one of our famous disagreements here. Patrese, in fact, had all sorts of problems. I went into the pits this morning, and I went straight in past his car, and I went out to him and I said, OK, Riccardo? And he said, oh, yes, he's fine, no problem at all, no problem, just look. And I looked at the car, and it was split in two pieces. He'd had all sorts of setting up problems. He had had an alternator belt break, and he was about 6 feet off the ground, and he has had quite a few other problems during practice. I said earlier on he was second fastest in the first practice period and fourth in the others, and that was because he had had glitches. He spun off at one point in one of the practice sessions as a result of a gearbox problem. But anyway, Nigel Mansell now, you can see, is closing up through the field. I'm just trying to identify who that is in front of him as he goes round the left-hander. It's Mansell leading, Patrese second, Senna third, Alesi fourth, no change there.
All depends who you talk to, doesn't it, Murray? Certainly the team don't say the computer printout, he just wasn't going quick through the quick corners. Nothing like as quick as Nigel, and was losing all the time there. But anyway, they apparently are perplexed now because Senna is even closer. He's now under 4 seconds behind Riccardo Patrese. And the team, of course, in this day and age are able, there's a wave from Mansell as he passes the back marker, a little thank you. And he's coming up on a whole glut of back markers now, but no problem. He's got 26 seconds in hand, so he can take 2 laps to pass them, and it won't really be a problem at all if needs be. And they'll see him coming. The marshalling's good here. There'll be blue flags, and Mansell also, with the speed of the Renault engine, the power of the Renault engine, should have no problem in passing these slower cars. In the meantime, whatever it is, the team, of course, the Williams team can monitor pretty much everything that's going on technically in Patrese's car, and certainly Sheridan would be right in reporting that there's nothing apparently wrong with it, certainly in the engine department, and some of the handling things, they have a readout. It's all coming over the airwaves, and they can watch it all on their computer screens in the garage.
Mansell has just passed Alboreto, who is 13th, and is closing up now on Olivier Griard, who is 12th, and has a bit of a reputation for blocking drivers. Griard in the Tyrrell Ilmore. Now let's hope he doesn't get in Nigel Mansell's way, because Mansell needs to maintain the smooth rhythm now that he has got in the lead. I apologise, Olivier. Well, there was a bit of a scrabble there.
And he gave him no room at all, and that was really out of order, because that wasn't too far from having the leader off. He had plenty of warning. He was not looking in his mirrors before, because he continued to fight his battle, and that is out of order. And sympathy goes out for Ken Tyrrell, because I think he's had to have Griard for money reasons, because his new car this year is looking very promising indeed. And certainly Carl Wendlinger, who we know is a talented driver, has made it go very quickly.
Wendlinger in the march, using the same Ilmore engine, of course, as the Tyrrell team. And the Tyrrell team are benefiting enormously this year, because the Ilmore engine is some 40 kilograms lighter than the Honda V10, as a result of which the fabled balance that the Harvey Postlethwaite designed Tyrrell 019 had with the Ford DFR engine has returned. The reason that the Tyrrell didn't go well last year was because the weight distribution had been spoiled by the heavier V10 Honda engine. Now it's back to what it was, and Andrea De Cesaris is charging to prove it. He is in 10th position, the Italian, and he is right with Thierry Boutsen and Eric Comas, and De Cesaris is actually now driving for his 10th Grand Prix team.
And thank you, Maurice, for correcting me on that. Absolutely. Of course, it's De Cesaris in the other Tyrrell who made it go very well in qualifying, showing all that promise. And as you say, as after the first lap incident, has come right back. He's caught the 2 Ligiers and is now got a bit stuck, because he's found his level and with the overtaking. But he is battling to find a way past Boutsen and then Comas.
Yeah, now here is Ayrton Senna. There is Patrese. You can see the gap. Senna had got it down to just over 3 seconds between himself and Patrese, who is second, and there is Patrese, who has got to pass somebody. I didn't see who it was as he went out of picture. Let's have a look. It's Gugelmin in the Jordan with the Yamaha engine, and I'm surprised he's got this far, because the new Yamaha V12 was grenading itself all through practice. I think the Jordan team have lost 4 or 5 of these engines, and Gugelmin was very, very worried indeed after the half-hour warm-up about his ability to go more than a few laps. But Patrese is now over 4 seconds ahead of Senna and is lapping at much the same sort of speed. 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, still a Lacey Schumacher-Berger. 7th position is Herbert now, followed by Comas, now that Capelli has retired, so Johnny Herbert is only 1 place off the points. In 8th position is Comas, immediately followed by Boutsen, immediately followed by De Cesaris, and Nigel Mansell has lapped everybody up to 10th position, which is Andrea De Cesaris in the Tyrrell Ilmore. This is the contentious Riccardo Patrese. Let's watch his car. And watch how smoothly it rides on that active suspension. There is Senna, who has now got to take his Brazilian countryman and friend, Mauricio Gugelmin, sponsored by the largest chicken farm in Brazil. Senna's last lap was 1:20.65. And Patrese was 1:21.5. So on that basis, Ayrton Senna that we're riding with now, I find it rather surprising that he's not closing up on the Jordan Yamaha faster than he is. That's Maurizio Gugelmin in front of Ayrton Senna, Gugelmin in the Jordan Yamaha, and moving over to let Senna pass.
Yes, indeed, and in fact, overheating has been a lot of the problems that have been making these Yamaha engines grenade themselves, as you splendidly put it, Murray. And but of course, the weather is considerably cooler today, and as well as that, the Jordan team have worked extremely hard to create more cooling and to cure the problems, but they really had a miserable time here in their opening race of their second season in Formula One, and with a local South African main sponsor, that's a big disappointment because Stefano Modena was unable to qualify the other car. Admittedly, they had very little running in qualifying because engines were popping here, there and everywhere, but that was a major disappointment.
Well, we were with Senna then. Now there is De Cesaris chasing one. Oh, he's chasing Comas. And in 10 laps, Ayrton Senna's cut the gap on Riccardo Patrese in second place from 9.45 seconds on lap 24 to 3.3 seconds on lap 34. And I don't think Senna's making the McLaren Honda go any faster. De Cesaris, there he is, 32 years old, and this is his 166th Grand Prix, as it is for Nigel Mansell. And just watch that Tyrrell, it really rides the corners as though it was on rails. And all the cars in this race, including the Tyrrell team, for the first time for a long time are using Goodyear tyres because the other constructor has pulled out of Formula One Grand Prix racing, and that's made things a lot better for Tyrrell and Benetton, for instance, who definitely had a tyre disadvantage last year. And Eric Comas, who out now, that is Katayama, the Japanese driver in his first Grand Prix, driving the Venturi LaRousse, which this year has got its own chassis as opposed to a Lola chassis which it had last year. There's Katayama, who out of his helmet looks about 32 years old. So 38 years old, in fact he's 28 years old, but he's going well in his first race.
Well, we've now passed half distance, so we haven't seen any routine tyre stoppers, as expected in the circuit. Is being very gentle on tyres, and it was really a matter that Goodyear, a lot of the teams felt, didn't bring a soft enough tyre. They're pretty hard, and it was rather strange. We still don't really understand why Michael Schumacher started on the harder B compound of the choice available, and everybody else was on C. But it certainly doesn't seem to be hurting him. He's going extremely well on it, and he is still right in there, battling with Alesi. He's been less than a second behind Alesi for virtually the whole race, or certainly from about lap 5 or 6. And that, I might add, is extremely hard work physically. It puts a much greater strain on the driver. You have a bigger physical effort because the car is a lot more nervous as it tucks into somebody else's aerodynamics. And there is Patrese napping Mika Hakkinen in the other Lotus, who did not have quite such a happy qualifying time as Johnny Herbert.
Yeah, Mika Hakkinen in 16th place, but much more important is the fact that Senna is now really closing on Patrese, who's going to have, well, he's got the McLaren Honda in his mirrors now, no doubt about that. And Hakkinen waves Riccardo Patrese through. I'm sure he will do the same thing for Ayrton Senna when he sees that famous shape of the red and white front of the McLaren with the yellow blob in the middle, which is Ayrton Senna's helmet, and we're with Senna now. So we're on lap 38, contemplating a change for second place between Ayrton Senna, we're with, and Riccardo Patrese in the Williams Renault ahead of us.
Yes, Senna will really have the bit between his teeth now because he knows that this is a major chance for him. He will be ready to stick his neck out here. He knows Patrese is not in his most motivated form and is probably taking things a little bit cautiously. And Ayrton, we know, has no fear when it comes to sticking his nose into a slot, but Patrese, that'll be a disappointment that Patrese's through. Ayrton's through as well, but no traffic immediately in view from the onboard camera. Mind you, the onboard camera foreshortens things quite a lot. Through the hairpin, and I should think Patrese now. Let's see if Patrese gets a clear lap and if he can respond, and whether the sight of Ayrton Senna can shake him up a bit.
Senna marginally faster, 0.2 of a second faster on that lap, and he's now, if you're interested in the time gap, 1.4 seconds behind Patrese, but you can see what it is visually. So you're looking at the battle from the helicopter between Riccardo Patrese, Williams Renault on the left, and behind him in the red and white McLaren Honda, 3 times world champion Ayrton Senna, who knows that if he can get past Patrese, it's the difference between 4 points for third position and 6 points for second position, which could be very significant in the World Championship later on in the season.
Yes, absolutely, Mario, because if Senna gets his nose in front of Patrese, he's not going to give it back again. That is pretty much for sure. So Senna won't make a mistake, and he will use all his skill to block Patrese. But Patrese's got a clear road in front, and we'll see what he can do. This is a clear lap he's on if he goes around without having to pass anybody else. And Senna, believe you me, will be driving his absolute maximum.
I'm looking across at the pit lane, and with Schumacher ahead of Alesi now, maybe his decision to use the harder compound tire is starting to pay off. We're expecting a pit stop. The Ferrari mechanics are ready, the McLaren mechanics are ready.
Well, that just confirms everything we've said about Patrese so far, because Patrese's just put in his fastest lap in the race, so what has he been doing so far? And I say again, I hope Damon Hill's watching this, because I think he ought to go and point it out to the Williams team, but I'm sure they won't need that, because they'll have seen it too. It really is a disgrace. It can only mean that he hasn't been trying so far, and it was some half a second quicker than Senna, who put in a maximum lap result. There's Alesi off the road, and there is Alesi in a cloud of smoke. We didn't see what happened. Maybe we'll see in a replay.
Well, that certainly explains why Michael Schumacher had moved ahead of him. Maybe we'll get a replay. Alesi looks all right. There's smoke coming out of the headrest of the McLaren, of the Ferrari, and I rather suspect that the V12 has said, thank you very much, that's enough for this afternoon. I'm hot, I'm tired, and I'm giving up. So Patrese doesn't seem to be giving up at the moment, however. There he is second. There is Senna behind him third. Mansell is now on his 42nd lap out of 30. He's just gone round in 1:21.071 and remains the fastest man on the circuit with that earlier lap of his, under 1 minute 20 seconds. There is Patrese now. He's coming up to lap Alboreto. If the Italian gets in his way, this could be Senna's chance to close up yet further.
Yes, and now that Senna's in clear air, he was able to go quicker, and Patrese still lapping at 20.1. So Patrese suddenly, with the sight of the McLaren right behind him, has pulled his finger out and not before time.
Both Ferraris out then. A sad day for the reformed Italian team. As Senna goes through. Now, what about Patrese? Bit of break up on the on-car camera. And Mansell, 26 seconds lead.
And of course, Mansell is the one member of the Williams team who will have no complaints about Patrese's driving. He likes it that way. And in the meantime, just to show who's boss, Mansell has stuck in the fastest lap of the race, of course reducing the new lap record, because whatever's fastest lap will be the lap record for this new circuit. 1 minute 19.1, and that is a second faster pretty much than anybody else has done. Nobody else has been in the 19s as yet. Patrese and Senna both slowed down a little bit because they had to pass a back marker on that last lap, but Patrese and Senna both about the 20 dead for their fastest lap. So Mansell, 28 seconds clear. He only has to keep it on the island. He has to pray that the mechanicals of the car work well. He certainly doesn't need to strain them, and he won't be doing that. Mansell is a good driver mechanically. The team's never complain that he abuses the car. He's a racer. Some people think mistakenly that Mansell breaks cars, but that is not correct. Mansell looks after cars. The reason he looks exciting is because he's a real racer, but they're made to do that. It's over-revving engines, missing gears and things like that that hurts racing cars. And teams had some complaints about Mansell. We all have our weaknesses, but breaking cars is not one of them for Nigel Mansell.
Well, having just seen the Ferrari of Alesi go off, I can confirm, having had a conversation with Capelli, that he thinks his problem is one of engine. Capelli's, of course, in his first race for Ferrari. He's feeling the pressure, I think, quite a bit at the moment. He's quite uneasy and rather hesitant about saying anything. We've seen Alesi go off, and I'll come back to you as soon as I can with further information on that.
Well, from the look of the car, I suspect it was an engine problem.
Yes, indeed. Well, their engine has been sadly lacking in power all weekend, and that seems to be the biggest weakness in the Ferrari team. And meantime, the Patrese-Senna battle has hotted up. They've both put in their own personal fastest laps. 1:19.6 by Patrese, and Senna has really taken up the challenge and is chasing hard. And this is Senna definitely at his most brilliant. He's getting a tremendous amount out of this quite outdated McLaren.
And on lap 44, it is Mansell leading by 28 seconds. Patrese second, Senna that we're with in third position. Michael Schumacher is some 10 seconds behind us as Alesi there walks in. Schumacher in fourth position. Gerhard Berger is in fifth place. Johnny Herbert is in the points in the Lotus at sixth place. Very, very good news that is, because the Lotus team need all the success they can get with this new car. Great news, Herbert is sixth.
Yes, and Herbert also confirming in this race his maturity, because he has been fending off very close attention from Comas and Boutsen from about lap 10 onwards, and that in itself is no easy feat in Grand Prix racing, to drive with somebody breathing down your neck the whole time. It requires considerable cool and experience as we watch the big battle. And there is Patrese, Senna. Well, Patrese has now gone to a 1 minute 19.1, which means that he has found a whole second since he got the sight of Senna, and that really will not endear him to the Williams team, because their question will undoubtedly be, what was he doing before that? That is the Cesaris in the pits, and that'll be a big disappointment. And they're changing the engine control unit on that car, but a big disappointment because the Tyrrell has shown, well, great promise, and so there'll be excitement about that amongst the Tyrrell team.
Lap 46, and we're watching the major excitement in the first South African Grand Prix for 7 years, and how nice it is to be back here at Kyalami. It's the battle between Riccardo Patrese there and Ayrton Senna there for second position, with, as you can see from the caption, Nigel Mansell 27 seconds ahead of White 6, Riccardo Patrese, the most experienced Grand Prix driver of them all, who is driving in his 225th Grand Prix, closing up on the Dallara of JJ Leto, who is in 11th position, long since lapped by Nigel Mansell, with Schumacher still in 4th position, 13 seconds behind Senna. That is Christian Fittipaldi retiring from his first Grand Prix in the Minardi Lamborghini. But Fittipaldi is only 21 years old. He is the youngest driver in the race from Sao Paulo, the same place as Ayrton Senna, and he's got plenty of time. And that is Andrea de Cesaris, and he's obviously out of the race. His first race for Tyrrell with the Ilmor engine is finished, and Patrese goes past the Dallara of JJ Leto, and now Ayrton Senna is going to have that problem, although Leto, the Finnish protege of Keke Rosberg, is a gentleman driver, and I have little doubt that he will move over when he sees Senna.
Well, as James intimated, it does seem that engines are Ferrari's problem at the moment. That indeed was Alesi's problem. He did not spin off. It's just merely an engine problem. Nevertheless, Ferrari do seem very pleased with the job he's done here today.
Yes, and I would think they're pleased also after a little disappointment with Capelli's practice form, but Capelli certainly went much better in the race. And in the meantime, as the race for second place has hotted up, Nigel Mansell has responded and has stroked, and there is the caption, a new fastest lap, and 1:18.7, and he's just, all he's doing is matching his pace to the gap. I am pretty certain that Mansell could go a second quicker than that at least, if he so desired. Of course, he doesn't need to, he doesn't want to. He no doubt will have some memories of the debacle in Canada last year when he started the ball rolling by suddenly putting in a tremendously fast lap when he didn't need to near the end of the Grand Prix. He will be more circumspect this year. He has come with a much better attitude to his season this year, but of course it's really going to start happening when McLaren get their new car, one would imagine.
Lap 47, and as you watch Riccardo Patrese from the cockpit of Senna's McLaren, here is the race order. Mansell is leading Patrese by 26 seconds. You can see how close Senna in third place is to the Italian. Schumacher is in fourth position. Gerhard Berger is some 7 seconds behind Schumacher, fifth in the McLaren. Johnny Herbert is sixth. Comas and Boutsen in the Ligiers are seventh and eighth. And Suzuki, who is ninth in the footwork, has been lapped, as has Griard 10th in the sole remaining Tyrrell. Leto is 11th, Alboreto is 12th, Hakkinen is 13th, Guterman is 14th, Morbidelli is 15th, and then out of the race goes JJ Leto as I spoke. Well, it's been a pretty unhappy South Africa for the Dallara team. They're using the Ferrari engine for the first time. The Minardi team had it last year, and now Dallara have it, and it doesn't seem to have brought them any luck. They had an awful lot of handling problems, partly because, as Keke Rosberg said this morning, their front wings were made out of spaghetti, and that doesn't help very much to keep the front of the car on the ground. They were stiffened just before the start of the race. It doesn't look as though that was their problem. We're on lap 48 now in this 72-lap race, the first World Championship event of 1992. And remember that in 1991, Ayrton Senna won the first, the second, the third and the fourth races of the year. No one had ever done that before. He had a maximum of 40 points, and Mansell only had 6 points after the Monaco Grand Prix last year. Well, this year, at the moment, Nigel Mansell is on 10 points if he stays where he is. Riccardo Patrese, you can still see there, is in second place. Not a sign of Ayrton Senna in this shot. So Riccardo, in this rather seemingly erratic drive of his, is holding the 6 points position. If the helicopter man would pull back a bit, you could see where Senna was.
Yes, he's not far behind. He's only a second and a half or something behind. He's right there. But there he is. Yes, no distance at all. And I have to say, from my own rather distant, long ago experiences, to be following somebody, but Senna in Senna's situation, somebody in a much faster car who is just driving it at half cock and going much more slowly than you, is massively frustrating. But I dare say it will have really got the adrenaline going in Senna. It certainly had that effect on me, and it's because it makes you mighty angry that somebody in front of you has got a car that should be going 2 seconds a lap quicker, and they're holding you up, as it were, and they're not driving it at all.
Well, new Williams coming for the Spanish Grand Prix, a new McLaren for the Spanish Grand Prix, if not sooner. As I said, Ron Dennis said the day before yesterday, and he's the McLaren boss, that they would be doing everything they could to accelerate the introduction of the new Magic McLaren if they felt it was necessary. Well, after the South African Grand Prix, if it finishes as it's running now, they will certainly judge it to be necessary. Benetton is in fourth place, and they're producing a new car later. Berger is still in fifth place ahead of Johnny Herbert's Lotus Ford.
Yes, certainly the McLaren, new McLaren is going to be ready to run this coming week, but there's a lot of technical change. It's very fundamentally a lot of new stuff on it, and I'm sure they'll want to test it thoroughly, because better to be like this coming third than retired with a technical problem, as the Williams team really demonstrated last year in the early races. And there is Senna, still less than 2 seconds behind Riccardo Patrese, with traffic coming but not enough. What Senna will be looking for is a group. There's a couple of cars, And that's one of them will be swallowed up there and then just on the traction and sheer acceleration of the Williams Renault. There goes the footwork. And Senna will be doing everything he can to get closer to Patrese, because he needs really to be within half a second of him and sort of 40 or 50 yards in order to pick up any sort of delay that a back marker causes Patrese. But the Renault is Williams Renault is so quick that he gets. And this is what Senna's looking for. The big train ahead of Patrese. The problem is that Senna's not close enough.
And there is Nigel Mansell leading the race, approaching several cars that he's going to lap. And if you're held up here, as I've said before, it can disturb your rhythm. Well, he's coming up now to Eric Comas in the Ligier, the Frenchman, and he is in 7th position. And ahead of Comas is Johnny Herbert. Now, they are going to be very, very involved with their own fight, and they're not going to be too anxious to let Nigel Mansell through if they can possibly avoid it. They won't be holding him back deliberately. Mansell, of course, has got a colossal cushion of well over 20 seconds. And now there is Gugelmin. Behind Gugelmin is Herbert. There is the Ligier, and there is Mansell.
And Herbert is also lapping back markers, so there is a one lap behind situation, and there are people who are 2 laps behind here, and Mansell's starting to go through. Mansell, of course, has all the time in the world to pick his way through this group. He really has no hurry. His lead is 25 seconds over Riccardo Patrese. We watch from Mansell's onboard camera. There's another one, and really no rush at all.
I was talking to Mansell, of course, many times in the last 4 days or so, and he was emphasising that after the problems that he and the team had last year because of unreliability and unexpected factors, that they had really concentrated on making the Williams with its Renault engine reliable this year. You can see the black radio mast sticking up ahead of Mansell, and as James has said, Nigel can take his time about closing up on the runners ahead and getting past them. He is now on his 53rd lap out of 72 for the full race distance, having already in his career won 21 Grand Prix. So Mansell goes through and takes the Ligier. And the race order now on lap 53 is still Mansell leading Patrese, with Patrese now 3 seconds ahead of Senna. This is really strange. Let me try a flyer on you, James. There's something wrong with Senna's car. I don't know what it is. Might be a gear, might be a brake problem, might be nothing, but there is something inexplicable about this Patrese-Senna situation to me.
No, well, Senna is going completely consistently, so the Senna clearly has no problem. And bear in mind, at the moment, traffic is dominating this gap. The fluctuation in the gap right now has been caused by traffic and back markers. But no, the problem, the inconsistent lap times are coming from Patrese. And Patrese has only really started to go at all since he got had a sight of Senna's nose. We're watching, of course, Mansell's car from the cockpit. Mansell crosses the line. Start yet another lap. But Senna has lapped very, very consistently, as one does when one's driving absolutely on the limit. These top drivers can churn them out one after the other. It's when they slow down that it's difficult to get a consistent pace. And the only really consistent pace for a racing driver is flat out. And that's what Senna's been doing. It's what Patrese has not been doing, and it's what the team have been complaining of all weekend. And they don't have to be the only ones complaining. It's quite visible externally that Patrese has not really been motivated or properly committed at all. I think the sight of a lighter Mansell at the weigh-in, and then Mansell's speed the moment he got on the track, has sent him into what seems, as far as this weekend is concerned, to be a terminal decline.
Well, he's terminally declined down to second place at the moment. He's been there a long time. He's still there. He is 3 seconds ahead of Senna, who is 16 seconds ahead of Schumacher, who is 10 seconds ahead of Berger. Herbert is still 6th. He's been lapped by Mansell. Comas and Boutsen battling together in the Ligiers for 7th and 8th places. Briard is 9th and Suzuki is 10th.
but one has to speculate, Murray, that if Damon Hill was driving that car, he'd probably be soldiering around behind Mansell with them both taking it very, very easily, because that is the superiority of the Williams, and the Williams car, with this superiority, should not be under attack from Senna.
Right, well, we'll have a little chat about that afterwards, I think, James. But Mansell now is on lap 55. He's just put up the fastest lap of the race, the first one to get under 1 minute 19. And Mansell is really on a, hopefully, race-winning charge from the point of view of all his fans. 1 minute 18.724, and that is about 3 seconds slower than his pole position time. It's a speed of just over 121 miles an hour as we look at Michael Schumacher's Benetton in 4th position, out on his own. That very distinctive nose with the underhung wing, and Schumacher is lapping quick. He's just gone round in 1 minute 20.07, but that's slower than both Senna, than Senna, Patrese and Mansell ahead of him. He's holding his position on merit, is Michael Schumacher. His highest finish so far was 5th position in Italy last year, and he had a couple of 6th places as well. So the extremely confident young German is online for his highest finish at the moment.
Yeah, well, now Mansell's just put his stamp on it because he's done a 17.9, which was always clear that was going to be easy for him, and he's been taking it very easy out front, which is what puts such a big question mark over Patrese's performance, because Mansell doesn't need to do it, and if he can do a 17.9, I'm quite sure he can go probably a low 17, if not quicker. He's just popped it in. He's keeping his lead at 25 seconds, keeping a comfortable cushion, because I'm sure Mansell learned his lesson last year not to go really fast. Patrese has got himself a little bit of a cushion. He's put his own fastest lap in now with an 18.6, and he stays 3.5 seconds ahead of Senna, and I think he's doing the minimum necessary to keep Senna comfortably at bay. But behind, the really good performance of this race for me is by Johnny Herbert, who's still in 6th place, but he's got himself, he just put his own fastest lap in, and he's put a little bit of a gap between himself and Comas. He's got himself a 5-second cushion, and he certainly has had to work extremely hard for that.
Well, now, with Mansell leading, Patrese 2nd, Senna 3rd, Schumacher 4th, Berger 5th. If Williams are going to be disappointed with Patrese, what do you think McLaren are going to be with Berger?
I should think a lot less disappointed with Berger than Williams will be with Patrese. Berger has been a victim, of course, to some extent of the difficulties of overtaking in this race, but I would think Berger himself would be very, very disappointed with that performance. But they are, you know, their car, see, the McLaren car is being flattered further ahead by the brilliance of Senna, who, without any doubt at all, with this red rag to a bull, that seeing somebody drive a much faster car rather slowly in front of you undoubtedly fires up the adrenaline. I think you'll find Senna will feel that this is one of his better performances ever, and he is really throwing that McLaren around, and it has no business really to be there. Schumacher also, I feel, has put in a very good performance.
Well, with Mansell now, there are 17 drivers left in the race, and here they are. Mansell leading Patrese, Senna 3rd, Schumacher 4th, Berger 5th, Herbert still in 6th position, Comas and Boutsen 7th and 8th, Briand 9th, Suzuki 10th, Alboreto is in 11th place ahead of Hakkinen 12th, Gugelmin 13th, Morbidelli 14th, Katayama is in 15th position, Van der Poel is 16th, having rejoined the race, and Pierluigi Martini is 17th. But everybody up to Gerhard Berger in 5th position has been lapped by Nigel Mansell. As you look at the flying Johnny Herbert on his way to a World Championship point in the Lotus Ford, a fine drive.
Yes, and he's just put in another fastest lap of the race. Of course, the cars do go quicker and quicker as the race progresses because the fuel load comes down and the car gets lighter, but at the same time this is a very exhausting circuit, and one thing that Herbert is doing without any doubt is proving his fitness and taking away any of the doubts that the rather ill-informed other team managers who have missed the chance to sign such a talent because they thought he wasn't fit or whatever they thought. It's hard to say what they think, but this should give them something to dream about now, because they probably missed their chance. But will be undoubtedly a target of the very top teams by the end of this, or by the middle of this season. There is Berger, who of course has been disappointed. And we had a look at Michael Schumacher's car just now, the Benetton, and you'll see that the rear wing was really covered in oil, and that will date back to when he was following the Ferrari of Alesi so closely. And you remember we said we saw a puff of blue smoke, I think, on the second lap. And certainly the Ferrari was being a bit smoky, and it would appear that engine failure was the order of the day for both cars. So a lot of work for Ferrari to do, because their new chassis looks good, as Berger has a look down the inside of the Tyrrell and makes it through. And he was seen this time by Griard, who maybe has got used to being lapped now. He's seen the field come past him at least once. And Gerhard Berger now in a relatively lonely 5th place.
Up behind Pierluigi Martini in the Dallara. And you can see on the right of your picture Karl Wendlinger, well, you almost saw him. Berger has passed Martini and lapped him. Gerhard Berger in 5th position. There's a long gap between Berger and Herbert, so I think Johnny will be settling for 6th position. They are, after all, on lap 59 now in this 79-lap race. And as I said earlier on, there are 17 cars left in the race. Mansell had a comparatively slow lap for him, 1 minute 19.3, having just put up the fastest lap of the race, 1:17.9, and that is the Minardi Lamborghini of Gianni Morbidelli, who joins his teammate Christian Fittipaldi. So they are both out of the race, and that means to say another retirement. Morbidelli was in 14th position, so we've now got 16 cars left in the South African Grand Prix, with Nigel Mansell on a possible 10 points, Riccardo Patrese on a possible 6 points. Wonderful news for Williams, because that would give them the maximum 15 points for first and second places in the Constructors' Championship, whereas McLaren are 16 points, whereas McLaren are only on a possible 6 points at the moment.
Yes, and it must be a big relief to the Williams team that it would seem that Patrese at least is now doing enough to keep Senna at bay, but Senna has by no means given up. He's just done an 18.7, his fastest lap of the race so far, and he's chasing Patrese every inch of the way. But Patrese seems to have stabilised this 3 to 4 second gap, and that's just about enough of a cushion to keep him clear when they run into traffic. But you can bet your life that Senna will not give up, and he will continue to hound Patrese. He will continue to try and pressure him into a mistake. But the trouble is, at the speed Patrese is going, a mistake he really should not make.
Now there is Thomas coming up to take, no, it's Boutsen, I'm sorry, in the Ligier, coming in 8th position, coming up to lap Maurizio Gugelmin in the Jordan Yamaha, who is 13th. Renault engine. And you can see in the background, behind Boutsen, Riccardo Patrese. So Patrese in 2nd place, 4.6 seconds ahead of Senna now, is coming up to lap Thierry Boutsen in 8th position.
And Senna will be praying that the Renault engine is as good in Boutsen's car as in Patrese's, and that Boutsen is concentrating on what's happening in front, because this is a chance possibly for Patrese to be held up, and that is what Senna needs. Senna, as you saw just in the background there, but Patrese's already passed Boutsen, and that will be a disappointment for Senna, who is just close enough to be able to see what's happening. There's Senna just coming into your picture in the background.
Yeah, and in the Renault pits, Bernard Dudot, who is the Renault V10 engineer, and his colleagues will be watching the monitors, the telemetry monitors, very carefully, because all the leading teams, Williams, McLaren, Ferrari, Benetton, have senders, electronic senders on the engine, which are constantly sending back to technicians in the pits, as Boutsen again unsuccessfully tries to pass Gugelmin, who will have nothing of it as Senna closes on them. And those senders, now there is a retirement, and that looked to me as though Gugelmin. No, it's Boutsen. Thierry Boutsen, as he shaped up to pass Gugelmin, suddenly stopped and is out of the race. And that means to say that now up into 8th position will go Olivier Griard in the remaining Tyrrell Ilmore. And I'll finish my thought as Senna closes up on Gugelmin, because those Renault technicians will be monitoring all sorts of things: oil temperature, water temperature, fuel consumption especially. That's the Dallara. Well, they're really dropping out now, because that's Pierluigi Martini's car out of the race, and we have already seen JJ Leto having retired. So Mansell leads, lap 63, 72-lap race. We're getting towards the end of the South African Grand Prix, an eventful one, the first for 7 years on this magnificent reconstructed Kyle Army circuit.
I think apart from Johnny Herbert's 6 sleds, what's almost more remarkable is that he's completed no less than 6 laps within 1/10 of a second of each other, which is quite a testimony to his driving skill. What's also interesting, though, of course, is that this year Lotus have got the Ford HB engine, the engine that Jordan used to such good effect last year. Now, the situation has really been transposed, because Jordan now have lost that engine, or they've given it up and have the Yamaha engine instead, and actually are struggling as a result. Lotus, though, of course, have gained so much with that power unit, and it does seem to be very strong indeed.
Yes, and Jonathan, I'm sure you'll agree that in order to do lap after lap within a tenth of each other, it's because you're driving absolutely on the limit, and as Senna has been doing, and as we feel that the Crazy has not.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right, James, and it's just by virtue of that kind of accurate driving that Herbert's kept ahead of both Comas and Boutsen, who, as we've said before, have got a vast budget being deployed for them through the Ligier team, and yet with the relatively shoestring Lotus effort, Herbert's kept ahead.
Yes, so a truly remarkable performance, and for me, certainly the drive of the race by Johnny Herbert is something we know he can do, and he just hasn't had the equipment to show it before.
So Eric Comas in 7th position now, and with the retirement of Thierry Boutsen, Suzuki in the footwork car with its new engine, as Frank Williams has a quick word, moves up into 8th position. Griard 9th, Alboreto 10th, Hakkinen 11th, and Maurizio Gugelmin, albeit 2 laps behind, is in the 12th position. I don't think for a moment he expected to be in, because before the race began he didn't expect to finish. So Riccardo Patrese on his way, and he's actually lapped a second faster than Mansell on that lap, because Patrese is pressed by this man, Ayrton Senna, who is some 4.5 seconds behind him, whereas Nigel Mansell is not in the least pressed. 26 seconds ahead of Riccardo Patrese on lap 64. Well, South Africa longed for this Grand Prix for years. Now it's got it. I believe there's a crowd of some 70 or 80,000 people here, packed in around the 2.7-mile lap. They've come from Johannesburg and from all over the world, for that matter. And many, many people hoped that there would be a change at the front. It looks as though we've certainly got one at the moment, with Mansell having dominated this meeting. Fastest on Thursday in the familiarisation practice. Fastest on Friday morning, fastest on Friday afternoon, fastest on Saturday morning. Then that absolutely spellbinding pole position lap on Saturday afternoon, when in the spare car, having spun off in his race car, he crossed the line to start a lap as the time for the 60-minute session was a few seconds off finishing, and he crossed the line behind a Dallara, had to move over, dink across, and must have lost several tenths of a second. That's Griard retiring, I believe, and the rest of Mansell's pole position lap was quite incredible, and he went round in 1 minute 15.4.
Ich fürchte, dass es regnen würde, aber der Regen hat nicht eingesetzt, Gott sei Dank, und es ist auch noch kein Fahrzeug wie vorgesehen an der Box, und inzwischen sehen Sie auch selbst wieder, wie Nigel Mansell sein Auto fliegen lässt, wie er kein bisschen vom Gas geht. 1:18.696, die Zeit in der 66. von 72 Runden. 65 Runden ist das Feld unterwegs, aber Nigel Mansell ist schon in seiner 66. Runde. Riccardo Patrese wird sie gleich ebenfalls beginnen mit einem Rückstand von immer noch 25,5 Sekunden, während Senna jetzt seine schnellste Runde in der 66. Runde fuhr mit 1:18:41. Aber der absolute Rundenrekord wird aufgestellt von Nigel Mansell mit 1:17:914. Ein Rundenrekord, der ja hier erst festgehalten werden muss, nachdem die schwarz-weiß karierte Fahne unten ist, denn der alte Kurs war wesentlich kürzer und die schnellste Runde, die hier je gefahren wurde auf dem alten Kurs, die wurde von Keke Rosberg gefahren. Aber dein Rekord, Keke, wird jetzt inoffiziell gebrochen.
Ja, so wird das alles langsam Vergangenheit.
So wird es langsam Vergangenheit, ja. Aber ich hoffe, dass dieses Rennen auch für Michael Schumacher so schnell nicht in Vergessenheit gerät, denn der Kartner fährt wirklich ein großartiges und vor allen Dingen ein unwahrscheinlich konstantes Rennen. Und 5 Runden vor Schluss.
We've got the pictures back at the moment. 5 laps to go. Nigel Mansell out in front. We still haven't re-established communication with Murray Walker and James Hunt, but at least you can see what is hopefully Nigel Mansell's cruise to victory around the Kyalami circuit. First race of the 1992 Formula One World Championship. The race returning to Kyalami for the first time in 7 years, and it was in 1985 that Nigel Mansell scored his first victory on the Grand Prix scene outside the UK when he led from start to finish in the South African Grand Prix, the last round of that year's World Championship, and he's leading from start to finish here in the opening round of the 1992 World Championship as well. Possibly this could be his opening drive en route to the world title, but a long, long way to go yet. I know Nigel earlier in the week talked of his fear of the heat at Kyalami as the temperature was up around 34, 35. He's had the benefit of an overcast day today, so it would have been a relatively comfortable drive. He was fearing temperatures in the cockpit of around about 150, 160 degrees Fahrenheit. It certainly hasn't been back today. Now we welcome back the sound of Murray Walker in full flight.
Still 6th, the lap down. Komatsu is 7th.
And Hakkinen, if he's not helpful, but of course he may have a trouble because Senna's lurking, but Patrese is through, and that's what Senna is looking for, back markers, but I'm afraid he's not quite close enough and there isn't quite enough traffic. And Patrese still has such a car advantage that really he shouldn't give this one away. But Senna won't give up. It's been a magnificent drive by him.
Comas 7th, Suzuki 8th, Alboreto 9th, Hakkinen 10th, Gugelmin 11th, Katayama 12th, Van der Poel 13th, Briard 14th, and Boutsen is in 15th position. As Senna comes up to lap Herbert, who lets him through. Now it is Hakkinen, I'm sorry, it is indeed getting closer. We're on lap 67, it's lap 69 now. 69, 70, 71, 72, 4 laps to go, including the one they're on. It looks as though, subject to reliability, there's no doubt about Mansell, but there is a doubt about who is going to be second. Patrese, number 6 there, who's just taking Herbert or Senna.
I saw a bit of a wobble from Senna in the middle of the S there, and I wonder if that was, it was probably just a little overcorrection. Remember, these drivers will be really, really tired, particularly Senna, who's had such a chase. And it was probably just a little overcorrection by him. Even Senna makes mistakes, but one worries that he's got a car problem, but it seems to be stable now. There's Herbert going through, or was it Hakkinen? I beg your pardon, Hakkinen. And Senna still charging on, desperately trying to stay with Patrese.
So on lap 70 in this 72-lap race, Nigel Mansell still leads Patrese by 23 seconds. There is the Italian in the Williams. There is Senna in second place, 2.5 seconds behind the Williams. In fourth place, Michael Schumacher is 23 seconds behind Senna. There's no doubt, I think, about the lead and the winner, Mansell, and the fourth place, Schumacher, provided they both keep going. The question is who is going to be second, who is going to be third. Berger is 5th, and Herbert is still a magnificent 6th in the Lotus. We're with Senna. The car ahead, the white one, is Riccardo Patrese, second place.
Yes, and Mansell has wisely slowed it right up now. Oh no, he hasn't. I tell a lie. Mansell has just put in the fastest lap of the race. but I'm sure well within his own capabilities, the 1:17.578, and certainly Mansell could go a lot quicker than that. He will not be risking anything, risky like going anywhere near flat out at this stage. There it is on the screen. Mansell, I'm sure, at least half a second in hand when he put that lap in, just enjoying himself. It helps keep the concentration alive at this stage. He's been on his own for a long time, and driving less than flat out makes it much harder to keep the focus and to keep the concentration. No problem for Senna to concentrate. He's the physical side will be hard, but he will have been. They've been totally focused on Patrase's rear end for well over half the race now, but he just can't quite get close enough, and he was off time in the traffic then, and the gap's now over 4 seconds.
Nigel Mansell on lap 71, just 1 lap to go at the end of this one, leading by 25 seconds. Vindication not only for his driving tactics and his skill, but for his application to his training program in Florida over the winter, which reduced his weight by 7 pounds. And in second place, Riccardo Patrese just staving off Ayrton Senna, who is certainly trying. And now Nigel Mansell is on his last lap. You are looking at the potentially victorious Englishman, almost home for the 22nd Grand Prix victory of his career. But far more importantly to him, 10 points in the 1992 World Championship, and the Union Jacks are flying all round this Kyalami circuit. There's one, there's two, and that's 10 points for Mansell. If Patrese can stave off Senna on this very important last lap, will be a lead over his chief rival in the championship of 4 points. A lead of 6 points. My mental arithmetic's letting me down. My apologies for that. Anyway, Mansell nearly home for those 10 points. Having dominated practice, having dominated the race, having put up the fastest lap in South Africa. He won in 1985. This is going to be a glorious back-to-back double, albeit separated by 7 years.
Well, he's done everything right today. No mistakes from Nigel Mansell. A marvellous drive. It's been easy, but he's handled it perfectly professionally. Tremendous win and a great start to 1992.
And Mansell crosses the line, waves to the crowd, and he coasts across by his standards to take the checkered flag before a delighted Frank Williams, justifiably so. It will be an equally delighted Patrick Head, of course, the man who is responsible for masterminding the design of the Williams, and it's vindicated their decision not only to bring in the semi-automatic gearbox last year, but the new active suspension this year. And Riccardo Patrese takes second position ahead of Ayrton Senna. In fact, where is Ayrton? So, well, he's a long way back. Ayrton Senna finishes 10 seconds. There he is, behind Riccardo Patrese. I can't believe that the Brazilian just decided he was going to give up on the last lap. That is totally out of character. But for whatever the reason, as Michael Schumacher finishes in 4th position, and we wait for the 5th position man to come home, and that of course will be Gerhard Berger, with Johnny Herbert in 6th position. We're now looking at the very happy arm of Nigel Mansell, and there he is. There are the Union Jacks. It's victory for Mansell, victory for Williams, victory for Renault. And Gerhard Berger goes across the line, and I think runs out of fuel as he does so. Very, very slowly indeed. But Johnny Herbert is definitely... There is Berger. Well, that's how close they cut it. And I'm going to stick my neck out and say that was why Ayrton Senna finished 10 seconds rather than a couple of seconds or so behind Riccardo Patrese.
Well, I'm with Patrick Head, technical director of the Williams team. Patrick, a perfect way to start the season. You've dominated throughout with your cars. How confident were you of this sort of result?
Well, we were running quite a new arrangement on the car with the active suspension, and it's relatively complex, so there was always the concern about reliability, as I think there will be throughout the season. The guys have worked incredibly hard in the garage. They were here till 4 o'clock in the morning. Lots of little problems, but each one has been isolated and something's been done about it, and they've worked out all right.
Well, you've clearly achieved reliability when it counted. Was it the active suspension which is the main factor in your level of performance?
The active suspension is certainly a help to the car. I mean, we wouldn't choose to run it unless it was assistance, because it's certainly much more complex than a conventional suspension.
Now, unfortunately, Ricciardo's performance was obviously some way off. It did not match that of Nigel's. Was there any particular reason for this?
Well, we're not really certain. I mean, it could be that we've got a particular problem on his car. In general, sometimes when Ricciardo has been a bit slower than Nigel and he's said there's a problem, we usually have found it that way, but we really haven't found anything particular this weekend.
Well, congratulations on a brilliant performance. Have you got any more developments to come?
I think everybody has to have more developments to come. I'm sure McLaren have, so we'll have to be able to respond.
Patrick, thank you very much indeed.
So, a memorable South African Grand Prix. The race returns here for the first time for 7 years to see victory, and a very, very convincing victory for Nigel Mansell in the Williams Renault, finishing 24.4 seconds ahead of his teammate Riccardo Patrese, as a result of which Williams get a maximum 16 points in the Constructors' Championship. Ayrton Senna third in the McLaren Honda, with Michael Schumacher finishing in his highest ever race position, fourth for Benetton Ford. Gerhard Berger fifth in the McLaren Honda, and Johnny Herbert for Lotus Ford, a quite superb sixth position and a more than well-deserved single championship point. Eric Comas seventh in the Ligier, Aguri Suzuki eighth in the footwork. Mika Hakkinen brought the second Lotus home in ninth place, so it was a great race for Hethel. Michele Alboreto finished 10th, and that's the best race footwork I've had for a very, very long time. Mauricio Gugelmin 11th, Katayama 12th in the Venturi Larousse, and Eric van der Poel finished only his second Grand Prix in 13th position in the Brabham Judd. Well, what do we glean from that? The race confirms what was very obvious in practice, and that was that the Williams Renault is head and shoulders, chassis and engine, suspension and everything else ahead of McLaren Honda. It means that the men from Woking, used to winning for so long and who never give up, will be there to try and produce their new car quickly, as you watch the crowd cheering Nigel Mansell, Magic Mansell. There he is, Magic Mansell, looking very happy with every justification, with Riccardo Patrese, Ayrton Senna and Mr. Pete Bertha, who is the Foreign Minister of South Africa, applauding them. You can hear the reception that the crowd is giving Nigel Mansell. Grand Prix racing is back in South Africa, and it's great. Patrese on the left, Senna. Three men, all very happy for various reasons. I mean, Ayrton Senna won't be happy to have finished only third, which is pretty poor by his standards, but he will be happy to have got 4 points in a situation where every point in the World Championship counts. And it's Nigel Mansell leading with the 16-round championship after one round, with Riccardo Patrese second on 6 points, Ayrton Senna third on 4, Schumacher fourth on third, and then in fifth position, Gerhard Berger 2 points, and Johnny Herbert, that magnificent 1 point for Lotus, sixth position. So now it's trophy time, and well done, Riccardo Patrese. Second place, 6 points on his 225th Grand Prix. That lifts his points to 213. Ayrton Senna intending nearly to drop the trophy, and he would have preferred it to be the winning one, very obviously, but it's lifted his points total to 495, a quite incredible amount from his 127 Grand Prix. And Nigel Mansell, this is the traditional champagne fight, of course, and that's the South African Grand Prix story, a wonderful return to this hospitable country and its magnificent circuit with the victorious Nigel Mansell.